This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Now that the U.S. Mint has phased out making new pennies, what are Seattle consumers and businesses supposed to do with all of those coins? And our contributor Chase Hutchinson is coming to us live from South by Southwest, where he'll give us a rundown on Pacific Northwest movies and his recent conversation with Marshawn Lynch. Chase, what? How are you always doing the most?
I just don't sleep.
Sleep, not that important when you have to talk to Marshawn Lynch. Creative producer Sam J. Leeds is also here. Welcome, Sam.
Hi.
Okay, but first, before we get into all of that, some Seattleites are continuing to call on Mayor Katie Wilson to turn off the CCTV cameras that are scattered across the city. She has not yet moved ahead with what was a planned expansion of that program, but there are still around 50 cameras up and running around town. And now this week, people who campaigned for Wilson are demanding a meeting within 2 weeks to talk about those cameras. She has urged council members to reject proposals to expand surveillance during her campaign. She was saying during the campaign that turning on more cameras won't magically make our neighborhoods safer. Yesterday was the last day to sign that petition. Do we think this latest attempt to bring Wilson to the table to get her to make a decision about this is actually going to exert fresh pressure on her?
Unfortunately, I think probably not. It seems like she got into office, started having conversations both with probably some of the bigger businesses in town, but also with just a variety of people who live throughout our city who have very differing opinions about the cameras. And, you know, there's been some really big tragedies that have happened since she took office. There was the shooting of and killing of 2 students at a bus stop. I think a lot of the folks who are mourning those students are wanting to hold the shooter accountable and see the cameras as an opportunity to do that, which, you know, I understand that desire for justice kind of in a vacuum. Like, it feels like surveillance might be a way to get that. But I also think there are some sort of bigger issues on the table with surveillance right now in terms of, you know, how do we protect people within the state from people coming in from the federal government to use that data? So I'll be really curious to see if she does say something at some point, or if she's just going to kind of continue to be quiet about this and let it run as is. I don't know, Chase, what do you think?
I was interested in something David Croman at the Seattle Times said this week, which was on a slightly different issue, but about kind of the tension between business or sort of the activists that are pushing Wilson on things versus like the other people she's talking to. And it was when he sort of said that Bruce Harrell had tried to position her as Sawant 2.0, but that's not really who Wilson is. That's not really how she's seeming to be doing things, which led to a dust up kind of on that side of things. So this is going to be kind of an ongoing point of tension. It's very possible that some of this pressure could change things. That's what political activism is putting pressure on to make the impossible suddenly possible and move the Overton window. But I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, I feel like this has been a key issue, part of Wilson's campaign, as well as after she's taken office, that people have really been trying to push her on. A month ago at the State of the City, she said, I know this is a contentious issue and I want to get it right. She has been talking to families and communities impacted by gun violence. And this week, in an interview with Naomi Ishisaka, the Seattle Times columnist, about working with communities of color, they were talking about kind of the nuance in what Wilson's been hearing from people in the community, specifically from families of those students who were killed by that gun violence. And she was saying, you know, often people do want more protection in any form that they can get it, whether that's metal detectors at schools or from these CCTVs, because they're really just desperate for anything that could help, you know, in this case, identify the shooters. or hopefully prevent this kind of violence in the future. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually what's going to be keeping these communities safer in the long term. But I mean, I think one thing that's really clear from Wilson's approach to all this is she really is trying to hear people out. She is trying to talk to a bunch of different people about their thoughts on this. And she's taking her time in thinking about how to proceed in kind of the same way that it sounds like she was with homelessness, as we've talked about on this show, with her decision to ultimately sweep this Ballard encampment. How much time does one need to really weigh these issues? It's been a couple months that she's been in office now. I imagine her first month was just trying to get things in order, but how long can she defer this decision or, keep hearing people out before it feels like people are going to exert enough pressure to actually make her decide one way or the other how to go on this?
I don't know what the exact amount of time is, but I feel like it's an equation that is really painful because the longer she waits, the more people are impacted by this. And we've seen examples of the data that's being collected from these cameras being used against people. We know that it's being used to track women who are going out of state to receive abortion care. We know that it's been used to track immigrants who are undocumented and kidnap them. And I think now that the federal government is also targeting trans asylum seekers and trans immigrants, it will be used against those folks as well. And I feel like there's a scale that is being tipped here in terms of, the more time she waits, the more people are going to be impacted by this data. And also the more data is gathered. And so I do think she needs to make a decision soon. And when I say I'm not sure that this particular effort is going to change her mind, I think it's actually about continuing to put pressure on her, like you're saying. And these folks are saying, we door knocked 50,000 doors to promote your platform and to promote your campaign. And now you're not making good on one of the key tenets of your platform. And I do think that there's a pressure attached to that hopefully will start to sort of make her realize, you did make some promises. And people are looking to you to uphold those promises.
Sam, speaking of opportunities to act on this and Katie Wilson's campaign promises, one of the things that she had said, in addition to urging the city council to reject the expansion of these cameras, she specifically called out Alexis Mercedes Rink as a leader in this. Mercedes Rink has introduced a proposal in city council laying out the conditions that would lead to a mandatory 60-day pause on automated license plate recognition cameras, so ALPR readers, and the CCTV cameras. I believe this is a conversation that's been happening for months, but it seems like the Public Safety Committee doesn't meet until next week, so action might not be taken on it immediately. Essentially, the proposal is that if SPD is asked to provide any of that camera information for immigration enforcement or to impede on people's civil rights in any way, that there would be this immediate 60-day shutdown of the cameras.
I wonder how that fits into conversations we've had on the show before with the UW Center for Human Rights. Angelina Godoy has talked about the fact that some of the data from these cameras is sort of being accessed through a back door through requests that the DOL is saying it's accessible to ICE and to immigration enforcement through means that they can't control, essentially, is what they're saying. I don't know how true that is. So I wonder sort of what would trigger this shutdown versus what data would be able to continue to be accessed and, they could continue to go through this back door. That seems to be sort of the larger issue at play here.
And I think it requires SPD being able to identify that information has been requested in some way rather than through this kind of automated backdoor system. Mm-hmm. And I think this also brings up the fact that CCTV cameras are very different from these license plate readers, which are, we got them on our bridge tolls because that's how we know who needs to pay a toll. We also have them on police cars. Like, these are just kind of driving around everywhere, and they operate in a very different way as a CCTV camera, which is just, stationed in one place and taking constant video. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of moving parts here, but it seems like there are efforts on multiple sides to try and limit how this data could be stored and also used. So I know that there also was this bill that just passed in the Washington legislature that would basically limit the amount of time that people in Washington can keep that ALPR data to 21 days.
It was initially supposed to be a 72-hour limit, and it got amended to 21 days, which is a pretty vast difference. And, I think there's some questions around, like you're talking about, Jane, the ALPR cameras are specifically taking photos of license plates. The CCTV cameras, like you said, are running sort of 24/7, just like capturing footage of their street corner or whatever. And both are sort of part of this larger real-time crime center that Mayor Harrell's administration created. And they say the software doesn't use like facial recognition, gait analysis, or biometric tools, but you can search it for things like red shirt, black Toyota, and it like flags matches, which we know are not always reliable in terms of what police are actually searching for. And so I think it starts to bring in like this gray area of like how long the data is retained. 21 days is a fairly long time. I don't envy the people who are in our government right now who are having to tease out each of these surveillance technologies, what they do, what they're capable of, and who might have access to them. As a journalist, I feel like it's confusing enough to follow, and then to be somebody who that's like not your specialty trying to figure that out. But that being said, my empathy only goes so far on that because it is impacting real people's lives in like very, very consequential ways.
I am so curious how good these searches are. I mean, if just searching my Gmail lately is awful, I don't know how much trust I would place in this software being able to really reliably search for a car make in what is essentially pretty grainy video in the grand scheme of things. All right, let's move on. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Pennies. When I first moved to Seattle, I started going to events at Town Hall as a way of getting to know the city. I've seen talks and panel discussions from my favorite authors and thinkers, and I even went to a concert there. Town Hall is a nonprofit with a mission to amplify ideas, foster civil discourse, and connect people through events. They're a community hub. Nearly every night of the week, you'll find a calendar of events spanning civics, science, and arts and culture. They're housed in this vibrant, historic building. The Wyncote Northwest Forum got this stunning makeover a few years ago, and it's been so exciting to go to events there ever since. Coming up on March 19th, journalist and CityCast contributor Marcus Harrison Green is hosting a panel talk on immigrant rights in the latest edition of Speaking of Seattle, presented in partnership with The Stranger. Get your tickets at townhallseattle.org. Like most town hall events, tickets are offered on a sliding scale with free tickets for people under 22. Again, that's townhallseattle.org. Is your heat or AC running more than it should be? That might be because your window insulation has failed. Now is a great time to replace your old windows with custom-built, high-quality windows from Window Nation. The pros at Window Nation can help you get affordable, energy-efficient windows before the summer heat sets in. Their installation crews finish the job in just a day or less so you can enjoy the rest of the season with minimal disruption. And they offer a lifetime warranty on all of their windows so you can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. They offer financing options too, including $0 down and payments as little as $199 a month. They've got an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, and they've installed 3 million windows across the country. Plus, they have over 45,000 5-star reviews. You can schedule a fast, free estimate now at windownation.com. According to the U.S. Mint, over the last decade, the cost of producing each penny has risen from about a cent, so like a cent and a half roughly, to more than 3 cents per penny. So basically it costs more to make a penny than the penny is worth itself. And so last year we said goodbye to the penny. The US government said, we're not going to make these anymore. I really, really enjoyed this New York Times Magazine piece from 2024 by Katie Weaver. The title of it, I think, really sums it up well. America must free itself from the tyranny of the penny. But now that we aren't making new pennies, of course, we've still got these pennies floating around. And it's this open question of how we're going to deal with those pennies in the grand scheme of things. So to kick this off, I wanted to ask you all, how often do you all use cash?
Cash occasionally, not typically pennies or coins. The world has shifted to where I don't use cash probably more than once or twice a week, partly because I'm not spending that much of anything, but also just because what I do spend is not via cash.
Once or twice a week is still pretty often. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, it's very rare for me. I feel like I will take cash out, like if I'm going to a drag show. Basically, if I'm going to any kind of like nighttime arts event where I know I'm going to need to tip in cash, I'll get cash out. Then it's kind of nice when I have extra cash in my wallet. You know, if somebody's asking for cash to buy a meal or something like that, being able to give that money out is nice. I feel like I often am like, damn, I should have more cash on me more often. But it's not something I think about doing very often.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, I often wish I had like a dollar bill to tip somebody with. But even if you get money out of the ATM, you're usually getting like a 20 and then you got to break it. And so that leads to our current conundrum of, you know, for those of us who are still paying for things with cash, I know my parents definitely are. And hi, mom and dad, if you were listening. It leads to this question of how do we deal with all of these pennies? So Governor Bob Ferguson actually received a bill on Thursday that would authorize asymmetrical rounding to the nearest nickel for all cash transactions. So if the total cost of something ends in 1 or 2 cents, it rounds down to 0. If the ending is 3, 4, 6, or 7, that all rounds to 5. Anything that ends in 8 or 9 rounds up to 10. So essentially, we're trusting Americans to do very simple math. Hopefully we can all handle it. But we'll see. I think even if Ferguson doesn't sign this bill, it will go through. It seems somewhat unlikely he would veto it. It seems like kind of a silly thing to veto. But who knows? Maybe Ferguson has strong thoughts about which way we should be rounding.
I was going to say, it would be very funny if he jumped in and said, the whole reason I ran for governor, defending the penny. That's where I draw the line. He's gonna launch a second term. It's going to be in for a penny, in for the pound is going to be the slogan. It's going to be very funny.
Yeah, I know it's been a little bit like the Wild West out there in terms of what each business is doing around this. Like Dick's Drive-In started rounding to the nearest nickel, just kind of on their own. But in general, like each business has sort of been deciding how they want to handle this. And I think it's a good idea for the state to sort of figure out like, how are we actually handling this? I do sort of wonder with the rounding for folks who a couple of cents do actually make a difference on a regular basis and who are primarily paying in cash. Is this another example of the way cash being sort of phased out is impacting like our most vulnerable populations? I know it seems like a very small thing to be nitpicking on, but I just, you know, we're starting to live more and more in a cashless world. And for people who don't have bank accounts or, you know, don't have a ton of access to a credit card or to building credit, I don't know, it makes the world harder to navigate.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think also I wonder if some of the more enterprising businesses could price things so that they do end in a 3, perhaps, so that they're really like maximizing, making that 2 cents per purchase. Again, I don't think that will necessarily make or break a business, but certainly it adds up over time, depending on what volume of purchases you're dealing with, either as a consumer or as a business.
In honor of the penny officially biting the dust, though, I will say I think I saw there's like a lot of them still in circulation. Like we're not actually saying goodbye to them anytime soon.
Uh-huh.
But regardless, I learned this fun fact, which is that a coin toss is not actually a 50-50 flip, like when you would toss a penny in the air and be like, oh, heads or tails. The side that Lincoln's head is on weighs significantly more than the tails side. So it was more like an 80-20 coin toss.
No, everything is a lie. Okay, this is such an aside, but the 50-50 thing made me think. A friend of mine told me this story years ago, and I can't stop thinking about it. He said that in his freshman year of college, he was taking a stats class, and this girl, like halfway through the semester, raised her hand and was like, I don't get it. Like, we keep talking about these percentages, like, everything is just 50-50. Either it's going to happen or it won't. And she's an inspiration to me. I think about that all the time because she's kind of right. Like, sure, you can break it down as percentages, but ultimately it's either going to happen or it's not. But maybe it is 80-20.
Yeah, nobody tell her about Schrodinger's cat and the whole quantum mechanics of it all.
I would love to live unencumbered by that knowledge as well. So, okay, so my last question to you all is, what am I going to do with all of my pennies? Like the other day I was like, great, I will take all of this random, like I have like literally a freezer bag full of change that I haven't used because I am bad at remembering to carry cash. And if I'm going to carry cash, I'm not carrying coins. Like that, you're just like, I've got 5 pounds of coins in my bag. And I tried to go to the Coinstar machine that I knew was at the grocery store, or I thought was at the grocery store, and it's been replaced by what looks like essentially like a slot machine, except I know it can't be a slot machine because I don't think that's legal to just have in a random Seattle grocery store. But do we know, what are people doing with these coins? What are you all doing with your coins?
I think that you should take all of your coins, everyone together, and go to a fountain, and everyone pool their wishes together. And I believe that that will lead to something good. All the coins. It will flood the fountain, but I think it could work.
Chase, what would you wish for? Or can you not tell us?
I can tell you. I feel like there's so many things to wish for right now, but probably, I don't know, an end to global conflict would be the primary thing. Just because, man, it's rough.
I'll meet you all at the UW fountain. We're all going to dump our coins in there and wish for an end to global conflict. I'm sure that'll do it. I don't see anything that's wrong with this plan. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to get the latest in Cut to the Chase. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. Also, leave us a little review. It's really helpful. And tell your friends about us. You can also get more local news and events delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. And you can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at CityCast Seattle. And you can watch full episodes of this show on YouTube. All right, we are back with our weekly segment, Cut to the Chase, where we have our contributor, Chase Hutchinson, tell us about the latest in arts and culture. Chase, you're currently in Austin at South by Southwest right now. What are you seeing there that we should be looking out for here in the Pacific Northwest?
Well, there are a bunch of really good things. The first one I would say, our Marshawn Lynch conversation, he's in a movie called He Bleeds Neon that I think is really interesting and sees him doing a lot of new stuff as an actor.
I don't know a ton about Marshawn Lynch's acting career, but I am told that he has one. Is this what he's been doing for the last few years?
He was in the movie Bottoms and kind of stole that movie. And it was interesting talking with him. Yeah. He's like trying out new things and is still trying to figure out what kind of career he wants to have. But this is him now. He's pulling his Charlie XCX era. That's where he's going right now.
I would say actually Charlie XCX is in her Marshawn Lynch era, actually.
There we go. Apologies to Marshawn. He did it first. We got to give credit to him there.
I just feel like he is so much fun to watch on screen. I mean, Bottoms is an incredible movie in general, but like his particular role, that he was just so perfectly cast. It was really a delight to see.
I did ask him if he wanted to ever do a rom-com, and he said he'd consider it. He says he's open to everything. Which, speaking of rom-coms, the other best discovery movie of South by Southwest is this movie called Wishful Thinking, which is not directly Washington, but it is our neighbors in Portland, and the Pacific Northwest is a critical part of it. It's about a couple that discover they have the ability to manifest positive and negative things in the world based on the status of their relationship. And that's
Ooh.
all I'm going to say. It's sort of a lightly sci-fi conceit. It's what I've been calling the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind of the Pacific Northwest. And I think it's quite good and on that level. And I just had a really good time with it. But the Washington movies primarily are a lot of really good, interesting documentaries that I would say folks should check out that all have like pretty deep local ties. There was one about Bigfoot called Capturing Bigfoot. There's one about human composting called The Life We Leave. There's one about Phoenix Jones called The Rise and Fall of a Real Life Superhero. Do you know who Phoenix Jones is?
I just learned about Phoenix Jones a few years ago. I think it just predated my moving to Seattle. But for people who aren't familiar with Phoenix Jones, please give us a rundown and tell us how this film was.
Phoenix Jones, or apologies, spoiler, real name Ben, was a man that dressed up as a superhero and patrolled the streets of Seattle as a vigilante trying to, he says, crack down on crime and drugs. But the documentary sort of unmasks him a little bit and lets us look deeper at who he was, who he is, why he did this. And he was apparently here as well at the premiere, which is kind of a wild thing.
Oh, wow.
Those are kind of the ones I would say are really big, interesting documentaries that without spoiling anything or saying something I shouldn't, you can probably look out for at the upcoming SIF festival as well.
Okay, it's always so upsetting to learn people's government names when they have a really cool name that they go by. Phoenix Jones being Ben. You're like, oh, okay. But is Ben still in Seattle?
I don't know his exact whereabouts. The documentary kind of ends on a place with just a lot of uncertainty because he is a complicated figure, and the documentary doesn't shy away from those complications. And that's what made it particularly very interesting to me.
Okay, I do want to hear more about this Bigfoot documentary. Like, does it take kind of a straight-faced view of Bigfoot hunting? Like, I'm assuming it follows Bigfoot hunters because unless I missed something big, I don't know that it could really be following Bigfoot.
No, that would be huge if true. It is about...
Big if true.
Yes, big if true. It is about the son of the man that made the kind of infamous Bigfoot video that even if you're not big on Bigfoot, you've probably seen of the faraway sort of a very distinct walking through the woods. And you've
seen it, yes.
Yes, there is new footage that gets discovered that kind of set this documentary in motion, but it's not what you think it is. And it instead is about why this video had such a hold on the people of Yakima, which is where everyone was from, what it is now, the legacy of it, how it is that they are reflecting on it or beginning to question it and question the people that they cared about that told them that this was real. It's really unexpected. It ends up being more about stories and how it is that we make meaning out of things than it is really about Bigfoot. It is still about Bigfoot, but there was a lot more to it that I really appreciated.
Yeah, I feel like often when you have a piece of art that's about looking for the unknown, it's so often about the people doing the looking and what drives them. And it makes me think of this wonderful podcast that I listened to a few years ago called Wild Thing. It's by Laura Krantz, who I think is a radio editor. And essentially she is a relative of one of the biggest Bigfoot scholars. And she gets this just really amazing access to people who are like deep in this world. And she really gets into the background and why people are so drawn to it. And I think a lot of it happens up here in the Pacific Northwest for obvious reasons. I think down in Oregon, though. But okay, I would definitely check that one out as well.
I think that if you liked that podcast, this would be a great companion to it, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chase, what else is going on in your world?
I also talked to Rose Byrne because she's going to be in this movie called Tow that's based on a real person from Seattle, Amanda, whose car was stolen, got towed, and she couldn't get it back. The towing company basically put her through years of struggle to figure this out. And the film did not shoot here a lot. It shot here for a day, but it is very much in conversation with the questions about the systems we build and how it criminalizes poverty, how it prevents people from finding a way out of these things. And it's sort of an Aaron Brockovich-esque tale that I think is interesting. They're doing a Q&A with all of the subjects and the producer of the film at SIF on Friday. So those are the big things in my world.
Fascinating.
Not toe as in the foot.
Okay.
Toe as in toe.
Well, it makes me think of the tow truck, the TOW truck.
What is that?
Oh my God, Chase. Wow. It's an iconic truck in Seattle. The guy who owned that company died this year, actually. And the truck itself, I believe, is in the permanent collection at Mohi. It's like a foot, like on the top of a tow truck.
It's bright pink. It's Lincoln's tow truck, and it was built in 1996, apparently.
Yeah, very, very iconic in Seattle. Vanishing Seattle has made like little pins of, different icons in Seattle, and they have one of that tow truck.
That's right. I do feel like I'd have a harder time being mad about being towed if I were towed by the TOE truck. But
I will say, getting my car towed, this was probably like a decade ago now, when I was living in North Seattle. I came home one day and my car was just gone. And it turned out that my neighbor had towed my car because I had parked too close to their driveway.
No.
Maybe I was just naive, but I learned so much about how messed up the towing system is. I guess probably in the whole country, but this was specific to Seattle. Like, I had to get there before they closed that day, or the price went up to get it out of the impound lot. And I think like every 8 hours or something that it was in there, the price would go up again. And I was just thinking about like all of the people who depend on their cars, either to get around, to get to work, to pick up their kids, who might not have that extra cash to get a ride to get their car out, let alone to pay the fee to get their car out. It's a really messed up system. So I'm very curious to watch this movie, though I've heard that it's a kind of a painful watch.
It is about these heavier, serious subjects, but it still is kind of quick-paced, and it's a movie. It's a dramatization of it that gets into the heavier stuff, but also has moments of humor and heart without kind of sanding off the rough edges. It's not the greatest movie, I would say, of this. I would say Aaron Brockovich is still kind of the pinnacle of this, but it's a nice movie. It might still be a little bit too real for you, Sam, to be like, oh, I was there. I know what this is.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate in that it wasn't going to be a make or break my budget month for me. And I had a friend who could drive me to go get the car, so I didn't have to pay for that portion of it. But I was like fresh out of college, and it was the car I'd been driving since high school. I drove it from California to Washington, and drove it actually until like a year ago, when I had to eventually part with it, which was very heart-wrenching. But yeah, that car was precious to me and had, mixed CDs from high school in it.
No, I had a similar experience, except I had just moved to Seattle, and that was the only car that was available to me. So, and I didn't know anybody yet. So I was like, okay, I guess we're trying to figure out how to take the bus to the impound lot. But yeah, Rose Byrne as a woman who gets her car towed. I'm just imagining her character, the perfect bridesmaid in Bridesmaids, Helen. I'm just imagining that character getting towed. All right. Well, thanks, Chase, so much for bringing your Rex. And I hope you have a great time at the rest of South by. And Sam, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was fun.
That's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. I'm your host, Jane C. Hu, and listeners, we love hearing from you all. Send us your news tips, your questions, your hot goss, your thoughts about what you are doing with your pennies. Send us an email at seattle@citycast.fm. You can also text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline at 206-880-3931. I mean, I guess another thing we could do if you really wanted, text us if you're interested. We'll plan that get together where we put all of our pennies in a fountain
in Drumheller
and wish for something nice. Okay, until next time, see you, Seattle.